What are your thoughts on the report that Kevin Durant prefers the Spurs? I was not a huge fan of this fit. We were talking last week about how Wemby being very thin, KD being very thin, even De'Aaron Fox he's a super fast guard, but he's not a power player. Not a lot of power on that roster, Colin. What are your thoughts on KD potentially going to the Spurs?
Well, I mean, to me, Wembanyama and Stephon Castle are the team. Like, there's nothing against De'Aaron and Vassell, but I think those two guys are all stars. One of them all NBA. So, and I think they're just getting better fast. Um, I think I'm always cautious to say Kevin Durant doesn't fit anywhere. I think he fits everywhere. That's like my wife always says, like, salt works with everything. Like my son was a chef, my stepson. It's like, yeah, bacon grease and butter work with everything. That's Kevin Durant. Like, you can just find a spot for a guy who's the best jump shooter at any given juncture in the league. So, and I also think Kevin, it just kind of figures it out. I don't always like his decision making on teams, but even in Brooklyn, he was the one thing I liked about it. He was the one thing. I mean, in Arizona, in Phoenix, it was Bradley Beal that drove us nuts. Kevin Durant was giving me 26 and 27. I'm not disappointed with him. I've been disappointed with, his like team selection, but I just kind of feel like he's water. Like, he just kind of floats and finds his level, and I think he'll fit anywhere. And I also think you've got really smart between Chris Paul and De'Aaron Fox. You have good guiders on that team, like really smart guys. And you can be a really flawed team if you're intelligent. We've talked about the Miami Heat, like one of the smartest teams in league history. It's like
Mhm.
Allen, LeBron, Wade, Bosh, Battier, Haslam. It's like, geez, high functioning. They didn't have a center. Chalmers drove everybody crazy. Wade and LeBron kind of had duplicate games, and you're like, yeah, they got to four straight finals. Like, they just figured shit out, right? And I kind of feel like if you put Wemby and it's Fox and it's you'd have to move off. I think Harrison Barnes we talked about before. I think it
Mhm.
was but I mean, I just think KD would work. I think it would just work. I think it. I think Houston needs him more, but I mean, I think he looks at Houston and thinks, all right, like like Sengun, yeah. I mean, Thompson, is he a great offensive player yet? He's more of an athlete defensive player. I don't know. I think KD's smart and looks at it and just thinks, man, I could have bad shooting nights and we could score 128 in San Antonio. Like, I think that's how he looks at it. Maybe I'm wrong.
You know, I want to be clear. Just because I say it's not my favorite fit doesn't mean it can't work. Like, I'm a big believer in don't overthink things. Like, don't overthink Kevin Durant next to Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. Like, they're gonna score a lot of points and they're
Right.
gonna be able to get a certain number of stops. There is, we were just talking about with Desmond Bain. There's a reason why Desmond Bain's shooting is so incredibly valuable in the Orlando context on a team that not only doesn't have a guy who can make jump shots, but doesn't have a guy who can make jump shots off the move. So it's uniquely super valuable to that team. KD anchored by the physicality of Houston. I like the kind of like force multiplier effect he could have there. That said, even in the context of San Antonio, he's obviously a massive upgrade. He's obviously going to make them way better. There's even like some interesting stuff you could look at in the big picture. KD is like probably the best shooting workout guy in the league to pair Victor Wembanyama with. He's legendary for the quality of his shooting workouts, him going game speed, him working on shots that are specifically available in NBA games off of certain actions. KD is like a legend in his workouts off the floor. Wemby's going to be doing all those workouts with him. You know he is. And it would lead to a certain development in terms of Wemby's big picture health. But it looks to me more like less of a immediate contender juggernaut and more of like kind of a fun place for KD to end his career where he can
That's
go
right.
hand in hand in Wemby, you
That's
know.
what I think. I think
Mhm.
KD looks at it and thinks this would be fun. is that
Hmm.
I wouldn't have to drop 28. Points would come easy. And I think Katie looks at it and thinks, okay, De'Aaron Fox, Wemby, the structure of the organization, they draft smart players. They don't draft a lot of ego. They don't draft a lot of dummies. I think Katie looks at himself and thinks, okay, Houston's got this. There's a lot of stuff in Houston that I'm not sure it's ever going to be great in the playoffs. It's a lot of hyper athleticism and length and running. And that's fun, but I don't think at this point he wants to be a mentor, right? Like I think he wants to go, I'm gonna go have some fun and play with really smart players, highly functional players, and all put the pressure on me to figure out where I fit. Like they don't need him. I think Houston needs him. I think the Knicks could really use him. So I think for KD, it is. I think that it's perfect. That would be fun. It would be fun for him, and I think it would be fun for us.
It falls in line with the same ideology that led him to Golden State. Like to your point, KD could win a title in Houston, but it would be a chore and offense would come very difficult. He'd be facing crazy looks. Now, the flip side of that is he wouldn't have to be the same statistical monster in Houston that he would be in other situations because Houston's defense is so good that he would just need to basically lift them over the top on the offensive end of the floor. But there is something to be said about basketball's more fun when the ball's moving around and you're playing with more offensive skill and when you
Yes.
like KD, if there's one weakness at this point in his career, he doesn't pressure the rim a ton. Well, De'Aaron Fox sure as hell does. So like he's gonna get to play off of those advantages and play off the ball. Like there is KD has told us to our faces exactly who he is for years. He loves basketball and he wants to play a fun brand of basketball.
That's right.
And so even if we look on it at it on paper and go, oh, Houston, big, strong, physical team, they can anchor him with defense. Ime Udoka is not the best offensive coach in the world. That team doesn't have a lot of offensive talent. It would be a lot like Oklahoma City in 2016. And I'm thinking he looks at that and goes, "Ugh, I'd rather play fun, free flowing basketball with some more talented offensive players." And so, with that being the case, I mean, San Antonio is going to be a really interesting team if they pulled something like this off. All of a sudden, a guy like Jeremy Sohan becomes super important because he'd have to be such a
Yes.
defensive anchor for them in terms of size and strength. Stephon Castle, obviously, defensively as a guard, would have to do a lot of that work. Again, I'm not sure that I would view that Spurs team as exceptionally dangerous, but what a fun way for Wemby to start his career, and what a fun way for KD to end his career.
Well, I think also Katie looks at LeBron and thinks LeBron's always figured it out. Is LeBron doesn't want to do a lot of the dirty work. Like if he went to Houston, Katie'd have to do some of the dirty work. He'd be like Steph in Golden State, where it's like, oh, Steph plays poorly. That's the narrative when they lose. It's not Jimmy
Mhm.
Butler, it's Steph. In Houston, very quickly he would be because Jalen Green's a hot and cold shooter, and very quickly, if Houston loses, it's like, well, Katie, he had an off shooting night.
We traded for him. He was supposed to save us from
That's
this.
right.
Yeah.
And it's just not the case in San Antonio. He'll be part. And I do think as players get older, they're looking for fit. And it's and I'm okay with that. I think as I've aged, I've always liked fit. It's just fun to be part of a group, a mix of young and old, but you don't want to be a mentor. Like I just don't think Katie at this point. I think fun is a really interesting word because Kyrie is fun to play with.
Mhm.
Like, that's why he went there. And Golden State no longer, because of relationships, he wasn't having a good time. He was winning. And so, yeah, I'm okay with it. He's had an all-time career. He's a different cat, but I've come to terms with not everybody's the same. I really do think though, what you're seeing right now in the NBA, I really like. And I know we don't have a super team, but it's becoming like the NFL. It's a very GM driven league. Like the smart GMs are going to win. A lot of them are in the West, and they have been for 30 years. That's why the West is overwhelmingly top to bottom, always deeper than the East. You just have more good owners and more good GMs. And the other thing is, I think we've really seen this. There's a lot of maturity in the league right now. Like Indiana and Oklahoma City, I mean, these are grinding outfits. I mean, I think Indiana plays pretty good defense. I mean, again, juxtaposition with OKC juxtaposed to that. Well, it doesn't look the same. But there was a in the second quarter in this game, I was like, God, Indy is giving them problems. So I think the league right now, it went through a cycle where it felt kind of you had old stars and two young guys. Like, and you had these Jaws and these Zions. It's like they're just not ready. I just feel like we've got this group of Halliburton and SGA and Jalen
And
Williams,
yep.
and it's just like really good Tatum, really good young players, totally dedicated to the league, and fewer and fewer old guys are relevant. And I think it may not get ratings, but I really like OKC and Indiana. Like I really respect top to bottom both organizations.